Uganda had elections and Museveni was announced the winner for the 6th time. Uganda is a poor country dependent on donor aid. There's a lot of corruption, and even the dictator was convicted for corruption. Because the donors require Uganda to have elections, Museveni organizes zombie elections. This has become more difficult since Bobiwine won a seat in parliament and founded the National Unity Platform. Surveys showed he had 60% of the Ugandans supporting him. Museveni is open about his intentions to use violence and instructed his NRM party to stuff the ballot boxes. On 18 November 2020, Bobiwine was arrested and people protested. More than 100 people were killed. On election day, the ballot boxes were stuffed with fake Museveni votes, and the numbers of the Electoral Commission didn't add up. Ugandans protested, but they have no chance against French tear gas grenades, Dutch SUVs, soldiers with Israeli guns, with Italian munition trained by the Americans and the British. After the elections, the violence continued and opposition members were picked up by so-called drones. 2 members of parliament and writer Kakwensa remain in prison and are badly tortured. How long will the world accept this injustice? Molto grazie.
Sì, grazie molte, dottor Shonderword, per averci aiutato in questa illustrazione del video. E dunque ora io darei la parola a Bobiwine affinché svolga il suo intervento.
Thank you very much for having me. Kindly confirm if you can hear or see me.
Yes, we do. We do. Go ahead, Mr. Wine.
Thank you very much. My name is Chagulanyi Sentamu Robert, although I'm more popularly known by my stage name, Bobiwine, a former musician, social activist, actor, but also I'm the leader of the National Unity Platform, a liberal political party which believes in democracy. We believe in freedoms. We believe in upholding human rights. We believe in social justice. This is a political party that I lead, and like it was rightly put by Comrade Nico, on the 14th of January last year, Uganda went to elections, an election that was marred with the worst electoral violence that has ever been witnessed in Uganda. Just on the day of nomination, I was abducted myself and a few other comrades, beaten up, pepper sprayed, and then dumped in our homes, while other people were left to, were left for dead. That was just the beginning of the crudeness. It was the beginning of the irregularities. The entire campaign was marred with arrests, blocking of our campaign rallies. We were never allowed to address the population on radio or TV, and neither were we allowed. Note that on the 18th and 19th of November last year, more than 150 people were killed. I'm mentioning only the number that was picked up by our human rights desk, but it is believed that the deaths were much more than that, although the regime in Uganda only reported 54 deaths. On the day of election, I was put under house arrest, but even before the election day, on the 30th of November last year, my entire campaign team was rounded up on Kalangala Island and dropped into prison. Many of them had to stay in prison for more than 7 months, while others are still languishing in prisons. Many have not been brought to court, and the charges that have been preferred against them are bogus charges. On the day of election, the entire entire internet was blacked out in Uganda. Electricity was switched off. Radio stations were restricted from reporting the proceedings on the polling stations. And yes, General Museveni and his military had a field day. It is unfortunate to see that there is constant disinformation by General, while he reported that only 54 people were massacred by his forces. It is much more people that are reported. And also the disinformation goes further because as we will note that the Italian representative reported that the elections were largely peaceful, which indeed was not the case, as people were intimidated, killed, and others were abducted, never to be seen again. It will be noted also that the European Union and the United States sent election observers, but they were not allowed, and therefore these elections were not observed by they were observed by neither the United States observers nor the European Union observers. And indeed, the European Union Parliament went ahead to protest the legality of the elections, asserting that the elections were fraudulent and were not free and fair. And so did the United States State Department. Allow me to assert on the issue of human rights. Human rights have been blatantly abused by General Museveni's forces under his direct supervision, where he has come out many times, chest thumping and congratulating his soldiers for a job well done. Case in point is the November massacre, which General Museveni came out on national TV and congratulated his forces for a job well done. And indeed, General Museveni came out on national TV and mentioned that it was the SFC, the Special Forces Command, an outfit of the military that is commanded by his own son. He owned it, that it is the SFC soldiers that are abducting Ugandans, which abduction, I must mention, that is still ongoing. Journalists have been beaten, some have been killed, while one of them is still struggling to stabilize, one Ashraf Kaside, who was shot by a projectile by the government police officer. Unfortunately, nobody has ever been brought to book. Now, talking about the November massacre, which was documented by the BBC, it is clear who shot the people. Even when General Museveni owned them, but they were covered on TV and broadcasted on BBC, has ever been carried out, neither has the prosecution been carried out by these perpetrators of extrajudicial murder. It is therefore surprising that the Italian ambassador was seen to visit the SFC and apparently have dinner with them. Remember, the SFC is the most dreaded and most feared section of the military that is responsible for broad day killings, broad day murders. And it was commanded then by General Museveni's son called Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is a military general also. Friends in the Italian parliament, allow me to mention that the world knows that fascism is not new to you, that oppression is not new to you. Italy suffered a lot under a dictator called Benito Mussolini for 21 years. But Uganda has suffered under the brutal oppression of General Museveni for now 36 years. Uganda is a rich country, rich in natural resources, rich in human resources, but the people of Uganda are poor. I want to beseech you not to continue being seen as a partner in crime. We know Italy is a world-renowned democracy. So I want to invite you to realize that the idea that dictators bring more stability in Africa than democracy is wrong. The European Union does not need a dictator to further its interest in Africa. We can live well as Africans. We can relate well with the European Union when we are free, when we are feeling as human as other people. We want to be accorded the same standard of human rights like the rest of the world, because it is argued that what General Museveni is doing to the people of Uganda cannot be accepted. If that if it was another country, particularly if it was a European country where General Museveni, where a leader does this to the people, then that dictator will not last long. We recognize that there are other dictators around the world, but these dictators, many of them are dictating over their people because they are self-sufficient. But General Museveni is completely dependent on Western financial and military aid. We cannot remove the dictator with our bare hands because we cannot stop the Italian bullets. And we request that we would rather be receiving Gucci from Italy than bullets. We would rather see the Italian population relate with the people of Uganda as human beings with the same standards of human rights. I will also mention that we have been requesting, and we continue to request, that the Italian government and indeed the whole European Union, holds General Museveni accountable and make the respect for democracy, respect for human rights, and the rule of law and social justice to make them preconditions for collaboration with Uganda. And where General Museveni is accountable, we request that the global Magnitsky is imposed on him. We call for sanctions against General Museveni and all his lieutenants who are involved in gross human rights abuses. We request that the Italian parliament passes a resolution to stop cooperation with the regime in Uganda because it is short of any morality, of any respect for human rights. Like I mentioned, as I conclude, the people of Italy suffered so much under fascism. But I want you to look at us in the same situation as the people of Italy one time suffered. We know that General Museveni has been able to present himself as a clean, as a benevolent dictator, but the definition of fascism and all its elements are fitting within General Museveni. Yes, we know that General Museveni has blackmailed the West as the only anchor of stability here in the Great Lakes region. And indeed, as you know, dictators love to start up wars to justify their violence. Just like the Nazis and the fascists like to start wars, General Museveni is not short of that. And that's why, as we speak now, he has deployed the military in Congo, even without the sanction of parliament, completely illegal. And all this is not being called out by the European Union and the Italian parliament. So it is my humble request on behalf of the people of Uganda to request you, the Honorable, to hobnob, not to continue to rub shoulders with a renowned dictator, or else it would be a disrespect of a democracy.
Sì, grazie Dottor Wine per questa illustrazione.
Support for the leader of the opposition, Bobiwine, activists for human rights, and all those who are waging a battle for democracy and freedom of expression and for the protection of human rights. What we've been told is most definitely a situation which is the opposite of what should be the situation in elections. Museveni, who's in power has been in power for 30 years, has used illiberal, anti-democratic and violent methods to keep his hold on power. And these methods certainly clash with international support. We cannot think, as Bobiwine was saying, that democracy can be sacrificed in order to maintain stability. This is a choice which doesn't pay, because dictatorship, repression does not lead to stability. And therefore, it is right that what's been told about military supplies also be investigated. We've been told that the Ugandan security forces also used bullets supplied by Italians. And so here we can also present a question in Parliament to have an explanation from our government. As Ms. Guarcapelli was saying, we'll also be asking for explanations concerning the decisions of the Italian ambassador, because we cannot consider the violence as something acceptable. So we will follow up on this hearing, and we truly admire the bravery with which you, Bobiwine, and the whole of civil society is waging this peaceful battle. I wish to repeat that, as you stressed, in line with the non-violent action of Nelson Mandela. And I also want to ask something about the situation of the LGBT community, which I suppose is very critical, because some activists have told me that this community is very distressed and is exposed to fierce repression on the part of the regime, which has often shown homophobia with regard to this group of people. So perhaps you could provide us with some information on this issue as well. Thank you.
Mr. Bob, are you there? Okay, I see you now. Have you heard my words?
Kindly, I heard them, but they were not in English. I really wish they could be translated for me in English.
Just a second, because I am ready to speak Italian in this committee, but I was, relying on a translator who is next to me here. Let me see, he can. Okay, I'm afraid that you haven't selected the right channel for the translation. So if you select on your mobile or no, I don't know, computer, whatever you have, the language channel. Ma scusa, prima come faceva? Sorry? Yes, but why now you have a problem in the translation that you didn't have before?
Yes, now I can hear.
Now you can hear me, but you should hear the translator, because I can't speak English formally.
I've pressed the English button.
Testing the English translation.
Would ask the translator if he or she, I don't know, can repeat what we said here.
Can you hear the English translation? There was a question which was put to you about the LGBT community, saying that it's being harassed a lot, and the government is acting very fiercely with repression against it. Can you tell us about the situation of that community?
Thank you very much. I would say that there's overall disregard of human rights in Uganda. By the rights of the majority and the minorities, they are all being crushed. And when we are fighting for human rights, we want to uphold and defend the rights of all the people in Uganda, regardless of who they are.
The other question, Mr. President, was whether you think it's a good idea if the human rights violations in Uganda should be reported to the Human Rights Commission of the European Parliament, if I understood the question correctly, of the first Deputado.
Thank you very much. Any platform, any institution that we can report the human rights violation, we report to. It is out of that desperation that we made this effort to reach out to the Human Rights Committee of the Italian Parliament, because we petitioned the Uganda Human Rights Commission, and we were told by the then chairperson of the Human Rights Commission that we would not be assisted. We were advised by the chairperson of the Uganda Human Rights Commission then that we should find a way of sitting down and talking with the human rights abusers, the soldiers, because they were above the law and they could not be apprehended. After he told us that, unfortunately, a few months later, he died unceremoniously. We petitioned the United Nations Human Rights Office in Kampala, and as I mentioned earlier on in my submission, the journalists that had come to cover myself and various other members of parliament who went to deliver that petition of the United Nations to the United Nations Human Rights Office in Kampala were beaten mercilessly. Journalists were clobbered, their heads were broken, and their limbs were broken. This was being done in full view of the cameras at the United Nations Human Rights Office in Kampala, being done to members of parliament and members of the media. So anywhere, any office, any platform, any institution that we can report the gross human rights abuses in Uganda will be our pleasure, and we will grab that opportunity and maximize it.
Ok, allora vogliamo ripetere.
So shall we repeat what we said previously so that you can now follow with the translation? So, the quarta pelle. I want to express my admiration for the bravery of Bobiwine and other activists. And I wanted to ask whether Bobiwine, an MEP, had ever asked to be heard by the human rights of parliamentarians of the Interparliamentary Union, which is an organization which gathers all parliaments all over the world. And the Committee for Parliamentarians' Human Rights aims at promoting democratic participation, interacts with national parliaments in order to ensure that the rights of parliamentarians are guaranteed. Since when you spoke to us, you talked about the conditions of Sigirinya and Sawanya, members of parliament who are currently tortured and imprisoned. We think that this might be one of the international human rights instruments you could make use of, and we would certainly be willing to facilitate this contact if you're interested.
Thank you very much. We have been looking forward and indeed making efforts and requests to get that opportunity. We promised an opportunity much later in Brussels, but I must say we will make use of any opportunity. Our duty is to make sure that we raise these voices and highlight the plight of our people. So at any opportunity, we will be there and we'll address our issues directly.
Molte grazie. Allora ci metteremo.
Many thanks. So we will contact you to provide you with all the details to undertake an initiative with this committee in the Interparliamentary Union. I'd like to bring this hearing to an end by saying that I greatly admire your determination to move ahead, to give a democratic future to your country, Uganda, a country which for 35 years has been governed by the same person. I find it totally unacceptable to see the violence and the repression which has been enacted so as to prevent people from voting and expressing their will. I also find that your non-violent action inspired by Nelson Mandela is very admirable, and we were struck by the fact that our ambassador did not notice fully these actions and did not stigmatize the actions of the government there, and we will be presenting a question in Parliament also about the use of Italian manufactured bullets against demonstrators who were there peacefully to express their intentions to vote and be a part of the process of change. So thank you very much. We'll be following up this hearing with these commitments, and we will stay in contact in the future, because we also think that it's the duty of a country like ours to support battles for democracy in other countries. So congratulations, persevere, and we will try to be useful to you in this effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate, and on behalf of the people of Uganda, we send our thanks.
Ok, allora.
So we thank you again, and with this I adjourn this hearing.